Will.
In 2001, one of Nintendo's most unique franchises was born, and with the long-awaited fourth installment in the oven, there's no better occasion to cover the first 3 games in the Pikmin series, starting of course with the original on GameCube and Wii. Pikmin follows Captain Olimar, an interplanetary pilot working for Hakotate Freight, when a meteor crashes him into an unknown planet, scattering 30 parts of his ship, the SS Dolphin, across its surface. With 30 days before his life support systems submit to the planet's deadly oxygen, Olimar must act quickly to recover the missing ship parts and return home. He soon encounters an onion-like organism spewing out a seed when approached. Plucking this reveals a half-plant, half-animal hybrid creature which Olimar calls a Pikmin, since it reminds him of a Pikpik carrot found back on Hakotate. He comes to discover 2 more species, and together these little soldiers are eager to fight predators, tackle obstacles, and collect ship parts at the captain's command. The game has different endings depending on the parts players collect. Nabbing the required ones results in the captain leaving without a word, as the Pikmin wait and wonder. By getting all the parts, the best ending has the Pikmin seeing Olimar off before attacking a nearby Bulborb, suggesting they've learned to fend for themselves. As Olimar sails into space, onions of all colors are seen rising above the planet's atmosphere. If the requirements are not met, the bad ending sees Olimar attempting to flee only to crash back down. The Pikmin carry his unconscious body back to their onion, where he is reborn with a Pikmin-like stem on his head. Progression depends on acquiring ship parts to open up new areas, and 5 out of the 30 are optional. This could have potentially given some agency to prioritize easier or mandatory parts to make the quota, but because players aren't informed which ones are optional until reaching them, the idea falls a little flat. Assuming the easy-to-find radar has been obtained, ship parts will display on the map, so players can spend less time looking for everything and more time figuring out how to recover them, which works better with this game's setup. I just wish the radar specified which 5 aren't required. Compared to later games, the levels here are pretty open, allowing for more free surveillance and strategy, rewarding experimentation and bolstering replayability. Until the final trial, environments gradually increase in size and intimidation. With a few exceptions, barriers don't prevent exploration so much as they block or limit Pikmin's carrying routes back to base, making clearing them rewarding. To avoid hostile nocturnal predators, Olimar retreats above the planet's surface at the end of each day, where he chronicles his mission with journal entries offering game hints and information as well as characterization for him and the Pikmin world. Through this journal, the player inherits Olimar's fear, curiosity, and amazement, and learns about his family. These entries bring flavor text and perspective on the gravity of the situation. Olimar is a puny man in an isolated fight for survival, and this microscopic scale offers an intimate outlook on nature where everything now seems big and dangerous. The creatures contrast this realism with designs that are the perfect amount of animal and alien, recognizable but with a twist. Despite being surrounded by dozens of followers, this adventure feels very solitary. Pikmin are not exactly friends. They're soldiers exploited for work, yet the player cares about them because they are the key to success, reinforcing the loneliness of leadership. Each Pikmin type has special abilities denoted by color. Red Pikmin are more damaging and resistant to fire, yellow Pikmin can handle bomb rocks and be thrown higher, and blue Pikmin are excellent swimmers, even able to save drowning units by tossing them back to land. Not every ability is necessary for completion, but all are useful in select situations, and I appreciate the slight wiggle room to accomplish certain tasks with mismatched types. In order to single out a Pikmin color, they must be disbanded into sloppily formed groups, then precisely called using the whistle. If Pikmin are thrown, swarmed, or dismissed, they will automatically interact with anything they come into contact with. Units multiply by transporting pellets and enemy carcasses back to the Pikmin's respective onions, where newborns are either planted or kept in its hull if there are 100 already in the field. If left in the ground or fed nectar, Pikmin will evolve from a leaf to a bud and flower stage, boosting their speed and power. Wait too long, however, and buried sprouts will revert back to leaves. While exercising patience for Pikmin growth is a neat concept, having to keep checking back at base in order to pluck at the right maturity stage is too inconvenient, and because they still count as field troops limiting my active numbers, it's best to rely on common nectar when and where it's available. This maturing system is so unimpressive that I intentionally try to keep 100 out, bypassing the need to pluck at all, thereby saving time. Bomb rocks may be the most polarizing mechanic. So much depends on their ability to clear paths and take out enemies, and they're usually kept in bothersome places, so obtaining and using them is quite the hassle sometimes. They render Pikmin holding them unable to do anything else, and on GameCube, whistling thrown units will set their bombs off, which is rarely what I want to happen. Until stone walls and bomb spawner locations are memorized, players are likely to be inefficient with them. It sucks wasting the precious amount available each day before blowing up important obstructions because that can really restrict progress. Bomb rocks are cumbersome to manage and a nerve-wracking safety hazard, but they're also a powerful tool, so I'm split on the game's overuse of them. Each day roughly equates to 15 real minutes, and this, combined with the 30-day limit, creates a kind of stress that has proved controversial within the fandom. But I will defend this system to the death, whether it's breaking walls, building bridges, growing Pikmin, defeating enemies, or transporting spoils. Everything takes time, and because it's a limited resource, it must be managed, leading of course to the strategy. These deadlines lend to a sense of urgency and give every time-based mechanic purpose. More manpower equals more productivity. The cost of spending time to grow Pikmin and remove things like enemies and barricades almost always results in gratifying time-saving rewards. The 30-day limit is purposeful and meaningful, allowing every aspect of the game to shine, and an essential ingredient for this gameplay formula. It's less about the literal in-game effect and more about how it drives players toward the most satisfying method of play, encouraging them to set goals to become better without demanding perfection. This also makes the game enticing to replay and improve performance when armed with knowledge and skill. There's even a scoreboard to incentivize such an endeavor. To that end, however, the more serious the gameplay is taken, the more precious time becomes, and the less patience I have for minor setbacks, such as the prep work of taking units in and out of onions, plucking individual sprouts, and especially the bumbling Pikmin AI, which can be stupid and unreliable. They will spread, scatter, trip, fall, get stuck, and generally just do unintended or unwanted things. Between the terrain and Olimar's positioning, there's no guarantee that Pikmin will land where the cursor is, so I have to guess at the throw arc when hoisting them up onto ledges. Because swarming doubles as a maneuvering tool, I would try using it to get out of danger only for my Pikmin to latch onto something in harm's way. Disbanded or unattended units aren't smart enough to avoid nearby hazards and they'll interact with things inopportunely. Swarming puts as many as possible on an object, but sometimes I only want a certain amount and/or type so I can apportion my army to handle multiple tasks, so it's annoying when more engage with things than I meant, forcing me to awkwardly call off and reorganize my squad before continuing, and it's basically impossible to round up stragglers without calling off workers close by. Gathering bomb rocks seems to take a little longer than it should. Large armies won't fit through narrow spaces and the excess will spill off. They have a slight delayed reaction when whistled and get sad after failing to pick something up, giving them a mind of their own. What begin as cute details become frustrations when I literally don't have time to indulge them. Pikmin can also behave inconsistently and unexpectedly. Like if I attack pellet posies, chances are I want the pellets inside, but instead Pikmin will return to the group and must be sent again to get it, though thankfully this was fixed in the Wii version. Once I've seen blues transporting spoils through water, it's not unreasonable to assume they can forge a path through water in every scenario, but that's not the case. Sometimes they don't even take shortcuts I open up. Ultimately, when it comes to Pikmin AI, there needs to be a balance between self-sufficiency and dependence on Olimar, as too far in one direction would diminish or overburden the other, and this game has too much babysitting for dumb behavioral quirks. This is exasperated by brutal enemies and hazards, where mistakes have instant devastating consequences. Despite the variety of monsters and their irritating attacks, combat is pretty simple: kill or be killed. With proper strategy, most can be dispatched in seconds, giving them no chance to retaliate. But I'm okay with this. The challenge of Pikmin is less about individual encounters and more about efficiency, and figuring out the fastest way to get rid of enemies is rewarded here. Wildlife are dangerous enough to pose a respectable threat, so they serve their role well, but nowadays I like to see which ones I can afford to ignore in the interest of time. Lying down will make Olimar impervious and even distract enemies so carriers can sneak past, though for some reason this ability is never explained. Some ship parts are kept behind puzzles requiring clever lateral thinking and precise manipulation of the mechanics to get Pikmin to unreachable places. Many of these call for a number of certain types to solve, but upon first discovery it's hard to know how much of each will be needed, likely meaning a return trip to the onions to configure the necessary amounts. Complex puzzles like these can take significantly more time, attention, and planning, reducing the viability of multitasking and the sense of satisfaction from getting lots of parts. Though I do enjoy the process and I always had plenty of resources to figure things out. For early GameCube graphics, I'd say the natural naturalistic environment still hold up nicely. However, as much as I love all this greenery, it would have been cool to see a little more color variation in the locales, because aside from the forest navel, the music does most of the heavy lifting to differentiate how they feel. The Pikmin series is a brilliant example of dynamic sound design. The music bounces from whimsical to serene, with area themes having variance depending on what is happening around Olimar. The only audio mishaps are some grating sound effects from viewing the map, scrolling text, going in and out of water with a large swad, big explosions, and getting squashed. The Wii version screws up a number of sounds with weird high-pitched squeaking noises. Of course, the main differentiator between the console versions is the controls, and my preference changes depending on the action. Swarm, for example, is crucial not just for battling and collecting, but also guiding armies around and through tight spaces, so having it mapped to the C-stick to subtly shift units circling Olimar is more natural than pointing a distance away from him while holding D-pad down. Units aren't always able to be thrown as rapidly as my inputs. I expect Pikmin to be thrown every time I press the button, and GameCube had an exploit for this by swarming and tossing in unison to keep units within grab range, something that doesn't work the same on Wii. Without any lock-on feature, hurling Pikmin can be somewhat of an estimation, which is only really a pain for targets above ground where the reticle can't help. Reasons like this make the Wii's IR aiming too much of an advantage to pass up, even breaking the game on occasion. It reaches farther and acts independent from Olimar's movement, so he can evade and attack simultaneously. Aside from this, the Wii version's biggest edge is the option to switch Pikmin types by holding A to grab, then B to change before throwing. With all the emphasis on utilizing Pikmin's unique abilities, there comes a need for a fast and reliable selection method, and this remedy helps quite a bit. But it would have been better to somehow switch types with a single button press like Pikmin 2 and 3 would end up doing. Neither version has traditional camera control, so I have to keep adjusting my viewing angle with triggers to see what I'm doing. Regarding the recent Switch version, there are some differences beyond the obvious resolution and performance bumps. The title screen's instructional video has been removed and the post-credit video redone, so it no longer features that trippy beta footage. Pikmin can now be thrown rapidly and respond faster when whistled. The Wii's audio bugs have been corrected and the crushing glitch fixed. The game opts for a weird hybrid of past versions' control schemes. Motion aiming doesn't initiate until certain buttons are pressed. This isn't so bad since I can hold A to point before tossing, but whistling isn't nearly as precise when I can't aim the cursor beforehand. I don't understand why motion can't always be active like in Pikmin 3 Deluxe, because R remains available to recalibrate the gyroscope. Swarming demands holding L in combination with the right stick. I still dislike using two inputs for this, but it's a fine compromise to allow for smooth camera rotation. These controls are good enough overall, though the lack of options is disappointing. In addition to the story campaign, there's also challenge mode, where the goal is to multiply as many Pikmin as possible by the end of the day in remixed versions of all the areas. This score attack minigame is a great opportunity to master mechanics related to efficiency and type advantages, like how pellets brought back by their corresponding Pikmin color spawns more units. It's a decent distraction and I enjoy the frantic prioritization, but between the recycled levels and bite-sized mission structure, I'd rather just stick to the main game. To me, challenge mode isn't substantial enough to get excited over, and there's a lot more where that came from. I'd prefer a game be too short than overlong, but even I admit Pikmin could have been developed more thoroughly. Special enemies like the Mamuta, Gulix, and Smoky Prague only appear in specific locations on certain days. Dwarf bullbears and wogpoles at the distant spring can later spawn where their adult counterparts were. After a Pikmin massacre, a few seeds can appear at the site the following day. Happenings like this are neat when they occur, however, because I tried to beat the game in the least number of days, I don't have much chance to witness them, compounded by how the majority of creatures eventually respawn, encouraging me to focus on completing one level at a time to avoid repeated encounters. Similarly, most bosses and environmental puzzles are one-off affairs resolved in mere seconds. The forest navel is full of these twigs and water spouts to hoist the characters onto higher elevations, but those surrounding the base seem pretty impractical, so whether it be the differences on specific days, the brief puzzles, optional ship parts, or pathetic bosses, too many ideas aren't given enough presence, leaving their potential hanging and underexplored. The original Pikmin could be written off as a tech demo given its short length, half-baked implementations, and shoddy programming, but it still manages to birth a deep and memorable experience. The genius of Pikmin is very understated, full of subtle touches that elevate this humble work of art. Every time I finish it, I immediately want to start over and do better, and that's a great feeling. I like that there are almost no repeated ideas or gimmicks, and adore how players are incentivized to engage with everything in the game. Certain mechanics could use some polish, and it would have benefited from more time in the oven, but the design is focused and condensed. This series has always resonated with me very strangely, and I think a big part of that is the complicated symbiotic relationship I'm forced to adopt with my Pikmin. More than any gameplay reason, I think it's instinctual to want to protect, nourish, and guide life placed in our care, especially something small and cute, which makes the lives of Pikmin precious despite being easily replaceable. The distressed sounds they make, the way spirits leave the dead's bodies, and how corpses are used for provisions, these details elicit strong human responses, yet rarely does the game steer the audience's emotions, rather depicting realities and consequences as they exist. Nature. This word is at the root of Pikmin. The value of life, leadership, hard work, teamwork, and survival are universal concepts ingrained in our psyches. Hopefully this isn't too weird to say, but playing Pikmin to me is an almost spiritual experience, much like being out in the wild, where I'm hyper-aware of everything around me. Life and death, space and time, all coalescing. The Pikmin planet is equal parts beautiful and terrifying, and this tonal contrast accurately depicts our world through such a creative and engaging video game that continues to grow on me. I end now with the captain's own words. It is very strange. The scenery of this planet, which I once found hostile, now sometimes strikes me as surprisingly serene. Perhaps the Pikmin have opened my heart to the beauty of this world, and I hope to see you again when we return there for Olimar's next adventure.
でも私たちあなたに従い尽くします